Juliani. We'll be talking about teaching in the concurrent classroom. We are live right now. The chat is flying. The chat is flying. There's so many people right now on it. I can't even see where everybody's from, but I'm telling you right now, Catlin, we got people from Brazil, New York, Idaho, Wisconsin, California, Orlando, Virginia. We got people from all over. Hey, I would just say right now, while you're introducing yourself, we'd love to hear two things while you're introducing yourself. What role, what school-based role do you have, right? Are you a fourth grade teacher? Are you a high school English teacher? What is your role? And what sports team are you rooting for right now? All right, because obviously I wear my allegiance right here. I got it behind me. I'm a big Philadelphia Eagles, Flyers, Sixers, Phillies fan. So share it out in the chat as you're coming in here. If you're not a sports fan, you can share the best book or movie you're watching or show you're watching. I am currently roped into watching Bridgerton. I don't know if anybody is, but I am roped into watching Bridgerton.
Blew through Bridgerton already.
Right, yeah. And everybody keeps it's telling me about this honeymoon episode. I don't want to hear about it. We'll see what happens as well. So some awesome good group of people in here. It looks like we have just about 1,500 live right now. And I know we had well over 4,500 that signed up. So if you're watching this live or you're watching a replay, we are happy that you are here. I am here joined alongside with Dr. Catlin Tucker. And she is going to be talking about teaching in the concurrent classroom, 4 strategies to make it work. I don't want to steal all of her thunder, but Catlin is an award-winning author of a number of books about blended and hybrid and online learning. She has 2 courses, Getting Started with Blended Learning and Advancing with Blended and Online Learning, that we'll talk a little bit about the end here. And I hope some of you can jump into her blog at catlintucker.com is awesome. Her podcast is great. We'll be sharing a lot of those resources to get through it. But we told you we're not going to be wasting time here tonight. We're going to be getting to strategies. We know if you've been teaching all day or in a school or working with kids, or you're like me and you got 5 kids at your house, you're pulling your hair out. That's why I got none left. But if you're here tonight or whatever time it is around the world, we're excited to share a little bit about the concurrent classroom. We know it's not easy. It is definitely the best situation, but there are some strategies that can help make it work. So with that, I want to turn it over to you, Catlin, so you can get it going and share with the people what's going to work.
Thank you, man. I wish every introduction was that high energy. I am thrilled to be with you guys tonight. I know we are on a really tight timeline, so I just want to let you know on the front end of this, if you have questions that surface, because I can't see the chat window while I'm presenting, you can find me on Twitter. I'm very responsive. If you have questions or requests for resources after tonight or in the future, feel free to reach out to me there, or you can always post a question or comment to my website, catlintucker.com, to any of my blog posts, and I will see it. So the concurrent classroom is presenting teachers with a very new kind of challenge. And there isn't a lot of research, definitely none at the K-12 level that I've stumbled on. I know a lot of people talk about high flex model being used post-secondary, but there just quite frankly isn't a lot of research to draw from, or even a lot of best practices. So much of what I'm going to share with you is learned from working with teachers every day, coaching teachers, and being very focused on problem solving. I know there are challenges, but instead of just focusing on the challenges, I want to be solution oriented. So 4 of the challenges that I hear most from teachers who are navigating the concurrent classroom are, 1, just the challenge of kind of managing 2 groups of learners who are in 2 different learning landscapes simultaneously. There's just a lot that feels kind of chaotic in that. The second is this feeling of kind of inequality of teacher attention, just not feeling like the kids, usually it's the kids online, getting the same time and attention that the kids who are sharing that physical space are getting. The third is just a general lack of student engagement. And this is kind of something I'm hearing no matter what learning landscape teachers are in, that right now it's been kind of hard to get kids to kind of lean into the learning. And then the fourth is just there is not enough time to connect with individual learners or small groups of learners. And since those are kind of the frustrations that I hear the most, I wanted to frame the tips that we're going to talk about that kind of address those big challenges. And when I was trying to wrap my mind around the concurrent classroom, which took me a hot minute for sure, I started thinking about my blended learning kind of expertise and the strategies and the models I've used, because I just knew that a whole group teacher-led lesson wasn't likely to combat a lot of these issues. And so for me, just to start with a really clear definition, when I talk about blended learning, what I'm referring to is active engaged learning online combined with active engaged learning offline. So for me, the focus is on that active engaged learner, right? I want students to be doing something, doing tasks, actively engaging. And blended learning is designed to give students more control over their experience, specifically more control over the time, the place, the pace, and the path of their learning. So they're not going to control all those things all the time, but the goal really is to shift control from teacher to learner. And when we think about why, like what's the benefits of blended learning, from my own research working with teachers, the big ideas, the big benefits that really resonate with teachers that stand out in the research are student agency, right? This opportunity to give students more choice, more voice, allow them to make key decisions about their learning. Second is differentiation and hopefully a move toward personalization. And third is more control over pace. So these three kind of big benefits of blended learning are very much woven through a lot of the way I approach my work when I'm supporting teachers. And ultimately, I would love for teachers in online, in-class, blended, concurrent classrooms to start reimagining their roles, right? Spending less time as that kind of teacher at the front of the room, whether that's a physical room or a virtual room, focused on kind of information transfer, and instead start to design and facilitate learning experiences that are student-centered, where the focus for the teacher is not on information transfer, but on connection with learners, where the teacher really is the facilitator. So those things are going to inform the tips that I am going to be sharing with you guys today. So tip number one is this idea that routines rule all, which is a quote that somebody said in one of my podcasts for the balance. And it really resonated because I think structure is incredibly important, especially in the situation where we are feeling a little bit like it's chaotic and there's a lot going on online and in class simultaneously. So start and end every class with a consistent routine. So the benefits of carving out 5-10 minutes at the start of every class for the welcome routine is that it improves classroom management and eliminates a lot of those wasted minutes at the beginning of the class. And so when the students walk through a physical door or come into a virtual classroom, they immediately know every single day without fail, there's something waiting for them to do. And it allows teachers a little bit of time and space at the start of a lesson to admit students to the online classroom, to welcome them, right? Because when kids walk through our physical door, they get like a wave or a hello. And sometimes the online kids aren't necessarily getting that. And so we want to carve out a little time to welcome them, those online students. It also eliminates some of the downtime while we're dealing with the tasks of taking roll. There's kids in our classroom, taking roll, kids online, right? Those administrative tasks take some time at the start of our work with students, at the start of each period. And I think even though it's a welcome routine, it doesn't have to get stale and repetitive. We can do all kinds of things with a welcome routine. We can even prioritize activities and tasks like goal setting, which sometimes get neglected in kind of the day-to-day rush through curriculum. And ultimately, this welcome routine should not only benefit like students and engage them in some thinking and reflection, but it should generate some feedback for us or maybe even some valuable formative assessment data. So some ideas for how to use that welcome routine Obviously, you could start with a bell ringer, do some spiral reviews, some retrieval practice. You could try to pique students' interest in a topic that you're going to explore for the day with a welcome activity that kind of gets them looking at some media and brainstorming questions or surfacing their wondering, or even kind of sharing prior knowledge about something. At the beginning of the week, say on a Monday, our welcome routine could be set a goal for the week. What's something that you want to work toward academically, personally, behaviorally? And what are you going to do this week to make progress toward that goal? I love asking for feedback. So if you did something, maybe you tried a new tool, you tried a new technique the day before, maybe the welcome task is a feedback form where kids reflect on something they did and tell you what worked for them, what didn't work, what suggestions do they have for you to improve it before you do it again. You can encourage some self-assessment, asking kids to reflect on a specific piece of work and think about what that work reveals about their skill set. Or you could do kind of a connect and reflect activity where you really encourage that connection between ideas in the curriculum and the students' lives so that we're orienting new learning in a larger context. And then, so that's the beginning of class. And then I love to have teachers bookend the bottom half of class or the end of class with some kind of an exit task, something that just creates closure, but again, can give the teacher some really helpful data on how effective was that lesson at getting kids to understand a key concept or to master a specific skill. Or maybe we even just want to drive like a short reflective practice, like what's one thing you learned today? How'd you learn it? What questions do you have about the learning? Maybe we do like a high-low check-in as a way to kind of end class, like what worked really well for you today and what was maybe challenging where you might need more support. Or even ending with a 3-2-1 activity, right? You could get all your students on a shared slide deck, have them grab a slide, ask them to identify 3 things they learned, 2 questions they have, and 1 thing they would love more support on, or 1 thing they're unsure about. So bookending those lessons just eliminates some of the management issues, eliminates some of the wasted time, and gets kids right on task and provides us with some really valuable data about where they're at as individual learners. Tip number 2 is to design and architect our lessons with equality of teacher attention in mind. So how are we going to make sure that all of the students in our class, regardless of whether they're sitting in a physical seat or joining us in video conferencing, have access to us as the teacher? So one of the things I really encourage teachers to do, if learners are old enough to do this, is to train them in class, online, use the same method to ask questions and seek support. If the kids in class can kind of yell out and ask a question or ask for support, they're always going to command more of our time and attention. But if we funnel all of those requests through the same channel, a message in a learning management system, a text or message via the Remind app or a class dojo, or creating a virtual queue with classroom queue that kids can join, or even just adding a Post-it note to a Padlet wall, that can make sure that those kids online have the opportunity, the same opportunity to seek our help and support. And then my absolute favorite way to design for the concurrent classroom right now is what I call the flip-flop, which is just a modified station rotation where you only have 2 stations, the flip and the flop. And what I love about the station rotation is kind of retained even in our current situation when we use this flip-flop approach. So instead of thinking of a station, which is what I think most of us do pre-COVID, as a physical location in the classroom, we're thinking of a station now as a learning activity. And when we break up the class into groups, we essentially take a larger class and create smaller learning communities. We have dedicated time as the teacher to work with a smaller subset of students instead of the whole class. I think as we start to create groupings, at first you might want to start with just your online kids as a group, your in-class kids as a group. And then once you get more comfortable, maybe you start blending so that the groups are composed of students in class and online. And you start to strategically differentiate the learning activities, the scaffolds, support, the kinds of practice that you're asking students to do. And in the alternate station, maybe there are opportunities for kids to engage in conversation and collaborate, whether that's online in breakout rooms or whether that's in the physical classroom. And ultimately, in a station rotation, even if it's just 2 stations, the station that is not teacher-led is going to give students a higher degree of control over the pace. So this is the template I've been sharing with my teachers who I'm coaching or training when they're thinking through this flip-flop design for the concurrent classroom. And this bit.ly link will take you to this template. Just keep in mind it's case sensitive. So capitalize those F's and capitalize the word template. But at the top, it starts the teacher by identifying what is the standard or skill that is going to be the focus of this lesson? And what are the learning objectives that they can articulate for learners about what they're going to understand or what they're going to be able to do, hopefully by the end of this lesson? Then you'll see I've woven in the routine of the welcome task at the start. You have that chunk of time, 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending on the total length of your class period, where you use a bell ringer, you do a connect and reflect, you have a feedback form. But the meat and potatoes of your lesson is the flip-flop, right? The flip, your teacher-led station, and the flop, your online or offline station, depending on your preference, your access to technology. And then you'll see I also have an end task, right? An exit ticket is kind of a norm within this template. So we're taking those routines and building them into this flip-flop design. So in a teacher-led station, right, this is the one we're planning for first, we're thinking about how are we going to use this time with half of our class that's going to feel dynamic, whether we're in person or online with them. And there are a myriad things that we can do. We can absolutely lead differentiated direct instruction. We can engage kids in interactive modeling sessions if they're learning a new skill or strategy. We can guide practice and application, provide real-time feedback if they're working on something, facilitate small group discussion, or even use it as an opportunity to collect some of that really helpful formative assessment data. And sometimes that data is just watching and observing kids at work. And I think as we develop our teacher-led station, this is a great place to start thinking about consistently differentiating for students who have different skills, different needs, different interests, different language proficiencies. So how are we adjusting our explanations, our word choice for the students who are sitting in front of us? What scaffolds do we have on hand so we can provide them to students who need additional support, whether that is sentence frames, guided notes, access to additional examples and visuals, having different prompts and problems available at different levels of academic rigor so that students have problems and prompts within the scope of their ability so that everybody can be successful making progress toward those stated learning objectives. And then pairing and grouping kids strategically in this station. Then you have your flop, which is your alternate station, and it's totally up to you whether that's online or offline. In this moment, online is sometimes, I feel like, easier for teachers just because they have this group joining virtually, but it's not a requirement that it be an online station, because I am very much a firm believer that in this moment, with the volume of screen time our kids are having, that offline learning gives them a very valuable break from the screen. So if it's an online station, maybe you have them do work with a personalized practice machine, like an adaptive software. Maybe you have a multimedia lesson built around videos and podcasts. Maybe you have them in some shared digital spaces working together to create things, going on virtual field trips, researching and exploring, or even designing and creating with online software tools. So one of the things when I'm coaching teachers that I encourage them to do is to kind of think about that online station through the lens of the 4 C's of 21st century learning. So how are we driving critical thinking online? Can we get them recording a Flipgrid video that's like a tell me how, where they surface their mathematical thinking? Can we get them being creative and designing infographics for history or a digital poster for English? Can we get them collaborating on a shared Google slide deck or on a Jamboard or in breakout rooms? And then I'd love to see more teachers utilizing online discussions, be that video-based with Flipgrid or text-based with the learning management system, or even small groups in breakout rooms. Because right now, what kids really need is that social interaction and connection with their peers. If you choose to do an offline station, then I want you to think big, definitely bigger than a worksheet, right? Like, can we get kids tinkering and building to learn? Can we really position project-based learning to be a big part of the work we're doing? Maybe kids are making observations outside in their home environments and documenting that in writing or drawings. Kids have access to all kinds of adults in their lives. And so maybe they can interview a grandparent or a parent or a friend or a sibling to learn about a topic or an issue. Obviously, problem solving, practice, simple experiments, or even art projects would be great for an offline station. And I know that when kids are working at home, the challenge really is, how do we appreciate that offline learning, right? So we have to train these kids to treat their learning like they're creating a documentary. Can you take pictures? Can you record a video? Can you write a reflection about what you did and what you learned? Tip number 3, increase engagement and motivation by prioritizing student agency. How can we build that voice and choice into the experiences that we're architecting for students? Where do they get to make a decision? Because if you look at the literature on research, there's a really clear connection between autonomy and agency and engagement and motivation. So there are ways to invite kids into the decision-making process when we're architecting these lessons. One of my favorite strategies is with a choice board. And choice boards are so versatile, but why they're so effective is we all know not all kids enjoy the same task, right? If you ask kids for feedback on an assignment, a third of the class will love it, a third of the class will hate it, and the other third is somewhere in the middle, right? So by giving them options, we can appeal to a variety of different learners, and choice is a powerful motivator. We can also allow students, as they work through choice boards, to have a higher degree of control over the pace of their learning as well, which is going to help them to be more successful. And you can even differentiate really subtly within a choice board, offering different opportunities or different levels of rigor within the choice board itself through the design, color coding the squares. And the more decisions kids get to make about where they spend their time and energy, the more they're going to feel ownership over that learning, which is exactly what we want. And I sometimes think there's this misconception that choice boards are just a bunch of fun activities, which hopefully they are fun and engaging, but they can also be used to really drill down into specific standards and skills. So when I work with teachers, we talk about the different types of choice boards they might want to create, the different purposes for which they might use these boards. So maybe it's standard aligned. So anybody who's taken my Getting Started with Blended and Online Learning course, there's a module in there where we talk about design and we do some curriculum mapping and we identify the target standards for a mini unit. And if you have 3 target standards, those can be the focus of the 3 columns in your choice board, and you can really get kids practicing and playing with those standards via a choice board. You could also do a subject-specific board. So I've worked with a lot of elementary teachers that are kind of lamenting that in this moment, they don't have a lot of time for science or social studies, right? They're feeling very focused on math and English. So maybe we create a subject-specific board for science where when kids have time or as extend activities, there's things they can pull from that science choice board. Or I even worked with a team of high school English teachers who put together a reading strategies board. And the goal was that they'd use it repeatedly over the year because there were 9 reading strategies and kids would choose one to focus on for each of the texts they were working with. We may also want to explore a thematic board, right? A health and wellness board, a physical activity board, a board focused on a holiday or a big event like an inauguration board, really thinking about how to kind of have fun with boards and focus on a specific topic, one that might get a little neglected in the day-to-day kind of race through our curriculum. I love using choice boards for kind of a choose your own adventure format, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. If we're preparing kids for an assessment, why not have a review and practice board? Some key vocabulary terms, specific skills for them to practice, concepts they need to understand, and allow them to decide where they need to spend their time and energy preparing for that assessment. And finally, I love a choice board as a way to give students options or choices around how they demonstrate their learning. Can we think about using a choice board for a creative assessment? So as I said, standard aligned choice boards are great. You can align each column with a standard, and then within that column, can you kind of mix the different types of tasks, the modalities, the media, sprinkle in technology, kind of blending the online with the offline options so kids can decide, do I want to do this online or would I prefer to work offline? There are so many different kind of fun review boards. So I created this one to share with elementary teachers about thinking through different activities that might help to reinforce what kids are learning, and they can do them in a classroom, they can do them in a home environment. I put together a series of well-being boards with Dr. Maria Hersey way back in April when I was very worried about everything kids were juggling kind of in the background of their lives. And so maybe thinking about utilizing something like this to encourage kids to take care of themselves and carve out a little time to prioritize their own health and wellness. Now, a choose your own adventure board is super fun. And what I love about choice boards in general, choose your own adventure boards specifically, is the time and space it creates for us as the teacher to connect with individual and small groups of learners as students move through and choose what they want to pursue in terms of the different activities. So I typically set it up as an engage, explore, explain kind of path. And in the engage column, whether it is a historical time period, a famous person, a scientific phenomenon, some like, figurative, if we're in English, talking about figurative language, will we ask students to engage with that information initially by reading a text? Might they prefer to watch a video or listen to a kid-friendly podcast? So giving them different ways to engage with new information. And then once they've kind of preliminarily engaged with that new information, how can we push them deeper? How can we get them really exploring? Maybe they are going to do some online research, or maybe they're going to go out in their backyard and make observations. Maybe they do one of those interviews with somebody in their lives, or maybe they tinker and build or experiment to continue learning about a big idea. And then the last column is about how do you want to share? How do you want to explain what you learned? How do you want to demonstrate your learning? Would you prefer to record a video? Would you like to do a piece of writing? Would you prefer something visual and artistic or a concept map? So it's about allowing students to choose, how do you want to engage? How do you want to explore? And how do you want to explain what you learned? And this brings us to our final and fourth tip, which is carve out time to connect with learners. I know that in this moment, teachers feel so spread thin. They feel exhausted. They feel like they're not getting through everything that they're used to getting through. And P.S., that's okay. But I think the piece that's really hardest for teachers right now is that feeling like they're not getting a chance to really connect in authentic ways with learners. They're not really sure how learners are doing at any given moment. And so how do we do that? One of the blog posts that I shared just last month was really about thinking through an approach to conferencing with students. And I get it. To conference with students means we have to create time. That's why we really need to lean on strategies like choice boards. You can lean on strategies like playlists or the 5Es instructional model, all of which I cover in my courses. But I really think that the conferencing is where we get to enjoy that connection with learners. And I have this 4Ps framework that I developed, which is purpose, preparation, post-conference plan, and parent communication. And it integrates this idea of student agency because it is the student who is determining the purpose of the conference. In advance of the conference, they decide how do they want to use this time. And then once they've decided whether they want to talk about their progress and revisit goals, ask for focused feedback, have a one-on-one coaching session, troubleshoot a problem or issue, then they need to prepare for the conference. What questions can they write down to have on hand? What work samples should they bring? And then during the conference, as the teacher and learner are meeting, whether that's in a breakout room or whether it's in a classroom, the student and the teacher are identifying what are those action items? What is it we're both going to commit to doing to make sure that you're going to make progress beyond this conference? And then anybody who's heard me speak before really knows I want students to own the conversation about their progress with parents. I want them, whether it's a little audio update for kids who are in lower grades, or whether it's an email that's CC'd to the teacher and sent to a parent, just saying, hey, mom and dad, I had a conference today, and this is what I asked the teacher to focus on, or this is what I chose to focus on, and this is how these are the next steps. This is what we're going to do together to make progress. So for me, I feel like the teachers I'm working with right now who are saying, you know what, I can't cover it all. It's not possible. Instead, what really matters in education right now is connections and relationships, and I'm going to find time to make those opportunities happen with learners. Those are the teachers who are feeling like this is not ideal. It's not what they would have wished for, but they're making the best of the situation. So that was a lot. I know you guys have had a long day. I appreciate you spending part of it with me. And if you individually, or if you're a leader on the call, you feel like you need more support, or the teachers you're working with need more support, I do have 2 self-paced courses that focus on blended and online learning, videos, action items, templates, and resources that are there that you can access as well. And then obviously I have a bunch of different books if you want to do a deep dive into blended learning. I post and share a ton of resources on my blog, and I'm always happy to field questions on Twitter if you guys have them, or if there's something you want to know more about. So 30 minutes, I'm out.
Yes. Hey, we told you we were only going to take 30 minutes of your time. I know it flew by, but that was kind of the point, that we wanted it action-packed. We know you're decompressing. Some of you have a long day, even though we had some folks from India that it's morning there, right? So they're just getting started with their day. Listen, you are going to get a replay on the email right here. You're going to get some resources that we're going to send out, links to those courses, to Catlin's book. Everything's on her website, though. If you go to catlintucker.com, you can access any of those. The books, the courses, following her on social media, on Twitter, all of that. Also, Catlin, I got to say, I mean, I don't know how many chat lines we've had here, but it's the most I've ever seen. I mean, there's thousands of chat lines here. We're going to have to sit.
I'm missing all of it. All I can see is my presentation. It's no fair.
You're going to have to see it. So the chat was awesome. It was flying the entire time. People were fantastic. We are so happy that you took, half an hour out of your day to come and listen and get some resources for teaching the concurrent classroom. I know Catlin and I both agree. Teaching a concurrent, parallel, hybrid, high flex, whatever you want to call it, it's not ideal. It's not ideal by any stretch of it, but many of us are kind of having to do that right now. And so what are some ways to make it happen, make it work? Catlin, thanks again for dropping some knowledge on it. We appreciate you and everything you were sharing. So thank you again for being with us tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you all later. Look out for that email with the replay and resources. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks so much.